Morning.
Ah, there you are. Morning, morning. Just opening a window. Well, two windows. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Yeah, weird weather here today. Sorry, camera was off. It's 8 degrees in the morning and it's going to be 21. So it's one of those, what do you wear?
Yes.
So I just have to have another layer. Right. So first of all, on a peripheral notion, checking my mic. Yes. The issue with going to that other country,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to be as loose as possible so I don't have to edit the video. Our
China.
our main colleague has issues with when she can take time off, and it's for best for her during Thanksgiving. But
Yes.
Thanksgiving for Americans with kids, especially, it's really really hard to take off. So I
Mm-hmm.
sent an email to uh, uh, Barbara, and she said she would absolutely love to go, but there's absolutely no way he can
Yeah.
go during Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Barbara suggested maybe we do it between Christmas and New Year's,
No, yeah.
which has other complications. Anyway, I sent that to our main partner, and she's getting an award and very busy. So I guess we'll talk about it on Monday. I just don't want it to be too late for our friend in the other country whose birthday it is today to be able to organize. Anyway, so that's that.
Uh, to me, so there is an event called the Chaos Communication Congress that happens between Christmas and the New Year. And it's a great event. I've only been once, precisely because of that. Precisely because it's honestly mind-blowing event. It's fascinating. It's important. I really want to go, even though it's hard to get tickets. But just the moment when it's happening makes it very inconvenient, especially again when you have family, when it's even if you're not like super traditionalist, that period is usually an excuse, a moment where there is no school at all. So it's an excuse to go elsewhere. So that's and in terms of also of the, let's say, project management in terms of the output for example Sloan, it's kind of problematic because it means the end of the year is happening like right at the end of the event, I guess, or even after. So I am not convinced. I don't think it's a good idea. Okay, I'll be a bit more direct, um, at least for those reasons.
I agree with all of your concerns except for the one with Sloan, because I think we have a good track record for the events. Plus, this would be a major thing. So I think they would be okay with this event happening at the tail end. But hopefully we'll continue next year as well with them. But for all the other reasons, I fully agree with you.
So they would, I think they would agree with it. It's more that assuming there is no year three or year one of a second, let's say, project, which I'm not suggesting. I would prefer there was another session. But if there isn't, it means like there should be a summary or some kind of work on about the event itself because it's such a big deal. Um, so and it should be not just because it's a big deal or because we mentioned or it's part of it. It's because we should have fascinating discussions then, and it needs time to digest it. So that's also why, for me, the a bit like last year, not too early during the year, not too late either. That's the best compromise because there is things to show and to do, and there is still time after to, yeah, again, digest it and like the consequence of the discussions. There is still time to make it happen. Whereas there, I think again, assuming there would be no year three, just not to be pessimistic, but to be pragmatic, then it would be super frustrating.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, anyway, I agree that between Christmas and New Year's wouldn't be ideal. So, on other matters, before we go into this documents thing, because I decided for you to write it on the web. So once we agree, we just leave it and lock it, or lock it and leave it, or whatever. It should be quite simple, should be quite obvious. Then I have lots of ideas, and you have many, many ideas of what to do properly. But first of all, something about author. because in the meeting on Wednesday, when you left, Peter and Mark were really happy to talk about lots of author things, most of which were irrelevant to us, also to me, to be honest. But there was one thing that was very useful in our XR world, and that is, you know, in author, you can mark text, and that has certain significance for views and stuff, right?
What do you mean?
Okay, in fact, to save us time, because you will see the relevance to our proper work in a second, but I'll just share the screen for a minute. I'm going to just hide relevance stuff. Okay, you can see this, right?
Yes.
So it's an experiment for me about making things more stand out, fade background. So if I now go into the outline, anything that is marked appears. Right, so that means that, for instance, I can mark the beginning of every paragraph if I want to. Here, I don't think we need more information. And then when I fold it, you can see, I can see as the author the key things, right? When I then export, I can keep that text and remove the formatting, remove the text, keep blah, 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 all these options. So then there's the opposite, and this is the key. This is what we talked about. Currently, there's an option called fade. Right, and to me, it's an experiment. I'm doing kind of the opposite. Like, instead of highlighting, should I just fade the other text, blah, blah, blah. So in the discussion on Wednesday, I asked them what we should call this. And we've changed the name. It's no longer going to be fade. It's going to be comment, personal comment. So the idea is that by default, and this will, the word will also change here, comment, remove. So the user has an easy way to write comments for themselves that is expected not to be exported. I think that is very, very useful. And the fact that it now has a name that it makes end user sense, I think is a lot better than a test thing like faded. So the reason I'm saying it is, in the elements of an academic document while authoring, being able to do that is probably quite important. I'm not saying you need to implement neither this nor bold or any of these things in anything near future, but logically to have the ability at some point to add stuff that isn't expected to be exported is probably useful. That was it.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Okay. Shall we go through this web page? Actually, we might as well go through it on here.
Yeah.
I'll just share. So then when I make an edit based on what you're saying. So yeah, please just have a look and tell me when you get down to this bit.
I did skim through, so I don't know if we go back a little bit to the discussion of was it 2 days ago? No, yesterday actually, on scene and whatnot. And I don't know how much of a good idea it's to use this word, in the sense that it comes from a technical notion. Actually, I wanted to share with you this also. 3ds scene, it's not just in A-frame, the framework we're using, but a lot of, so I'll put it, I guess, on well, I guess maybe because there is recording, I put it on this chat. There is this. So the notion of scene is not just in the framework we're using, but in the framework that the framework we're using is also using, and also in most 3D editor, like Blender, but also like Unity, Unreal. A lot of those game engines, they also use the notion of scene.
Yep.
So again, it's like, do we use scene exactly as they do? Do we mean something else?
I think that we should use scene. I'm also used to that term. I think Mark's question, though, was very relevant and interesting. When you change scene, does anything come with you? And of course, I think the answer is, if you change scene to be different layout within the same environment you have, the same code, Yes, but if you change a scene to something entirely different, no, it's like a different piece of software.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So yeah, let's use that term unless someone doesn't like it. Let's just not get too stuck on terminology. Yeah, I'll go back to sharing actually. Yeah, I just want to bulldoze through this because I think we got it. Anyway, so this is this. Okay, I'm going to edit mode. Yeah, scene, blah, blah, blah. The scene, the author and reader can recall for layout changes of the full scene.
So
Yeah, we don't need to explain it more. You know, the only people who have to agree on this list is you and me. Of course, Dini too, but you know, we can walk her through it. This is just to help our communication.
So the save scene with the layout changes for the full scene, it makes me wonder what's the difference between this and the layout JSON file we had at the end of year one. Because it sounds like it's pretty much the same. Like a layout.json file, it sounds equivalent to a saved scene. Let me see if I.
No, that's fine. I agree with that. It is practically the same.
I put also in the chat. But it does go a little bit back to Mark's question in the sense that in here, for example, you see some of the floating elements, let's say, or whatever else you would want, but you don't see the user interface, the UI, like the floating HUD and this kind of things. So there is still indeed the question of what never changes, what does change, and it's a little bit tricky in our context because of the prototyping aspects. So things do change over time, even though the scene might stay the same. So the content, let's say, but how we interact, it does change.
I'm trying to write based on what you're saying. Hang on, since the user can save and recall, I think it's important to have the user save in this sentence too, because it's save and recall rather than get a scene from outside that may be completely different.
Yeah.
Volumes.
To me, it would be probably one or the other. Either it's volumes or volumetric frames, but otherwise.
Well, what my logic is, let me just view it here. My logic is we have, okay. What we call volumes is using Rob's language right now. It's basically a cube. It's a document. Frames are anything that is easily pull-outable. So I have this thing here. This is, for me, a fun introduction for people. So they put on their headsets, they see their physical computer in VR, because from the browser, we know what kind of computer setup they have. So it's a rough approximation, desktop, laptop, whatever. Then immediately the keyboard and the mouse fades away. The display lifts up. And when the display lifts up, it becomes layered. So it's a nice way for the user to have a clue that it's basically the same data that's now in XR. And the last one is an indication of when these layers, the user starts pulling them out, which is our next fun thing. So that's what I mean, that all of this is one document. Each one of these is a volumetric frame. So I agree. volumetric frame and volumes are not good. Do you want to maybe change volume to document, or what? Where do you want to go?
So I think the distinction, but I'm not sure anymore. From what I read there, like the volume is the content, and then the frame is a kind of tool to put content on and eventually modify or change.
Not really. I look at it this way: the reference section, which already should be its own section, is a frame. The glossary is another frame, etc. So it literally is the default section of an academic document.
So it's part of a document.
Yes. What I think you are referring to now is panels.
Okay.
Should we just use the word document?
Sure. But then I think that it is documents that have a 3D visualization, basically. It's not just document, let's say, whatever.pdf. It's how that whatever.pdf is being displayed on the screen.
Should we just call it XR documents then?
Yeah, we can try.
Can try, great, okay.
But then it means volumetric frame is part of an XR document.
Yeah, but also an XR document cannot have something that is not in a frame. Because the frame.
So an XR document is solely composed of frames.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but why not? We can try. So there are subsections. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right, so then we get into this next fun thing, because I made them all links so we can expand if we want to. So literally, what I've been working on the last 2 days is to get to something as basic as what can we get our hands on? What can we touch? So I really like the idea of a cover, which is this.
Yeah.
And then we have outline is separate from the manuscript because it can be on the side to allow people to navigate.
Well, I assume each subsection of a document, because it's part of a volumetric frame, can be moved to the side or front or wherever.
Yes, exactly. But this one was a bit of a headache, believe it or not, because I had headings with text. So the idea is, let me see, have I mocked it up? This is actually close to use your illustration. I know this is something else, but imagine that each block here is heading level 1, blah, blah, heading level 1, blah, blah, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can have them as a box, you can have them horizontal, vertical, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this became. I now just call it a manuscript. So a manuscript is composed of everything.
So to me, yeah, that's what I was going to suggest, that basically a manuscript is a writing friendly document. Let's say if you pull in a PDF and it's not yours, basically you're supposed to just read it, eventually annotate or comment on it, but you're not going to save back that PDF. Whereas the manuscript is the thing you are writing, what you're working on. So that should be providing a lot more freedom of authoring than other XOR documents, let's say.
Yeah. And then there is an additional complication that is the thing they talked about. I think you were still there, Peter and Mark, about you want to be able to write a section. Like, oh, I'm not so sure. I want to have a different version of that section. So you write, and then maybe at some point you can have like 2 or maybe even 3 or 4 different versions of the same bit to choose which one.
I wasn't there, but it makes sense.
Yeah. Nothing we need to think about now, but it just means there will be something also like cuttings, which if we do that at some point, which is things you've cut but not pasted. You probably don't want to have that as a separate frame. Maybe you do. But these things need to be available from the manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Then we have marked text, marked, highlighted, and private comments, just as we just talked about.
Sure.
To have it separate is partly because of notions like this. You can choose when you fold the document in different views what appears.
Mm-hmm. So it's more the point I think there is that it's not just aesthetic. There is because of the semantic meaning, there are affordances specific to it.
Exactly. List of keywords is what I call places, people, dates. It can be dynamically generated. It could be pre-written. It could be whatever. But the reason I put it as a frame is that the user may want to have all the place names of what they're reading up on the side here, people here, that kind of stuff. And it would then refer back to the document where they are. Glossary slash defined concepts can be either a list or a knowledge graph. These are the default views. So basically a knowledge graph is really hidden in this. Should we maybe elevate it? Should we maybe make it more prominent here?
I would say it's up to the user. Some people get super excited by that, and others does nothing to them. So
yeah, but some users may not even use references. So we have to choose where it logically is. If it's empty, it won't show. So that's okay. Okay, yeah, fair enough. And then we have references, which can be listed and shown in different ways.
Yeah.
And so this was good. This comes from you. This is a section of stuff that doesn't have necessarily any data associated with it. Then we have charts, which is something that has data included. And interactive elements are basically a placeholder for now. Then we have users' notes that are basically notes in the margin because they're attached to this. And that's it. These are, and of course, spatial configurations, so that when you author a manuscript, you can have configurations of how it should be saved, so the reader can come along, or you in the future, I want to see it like this or like that, and then everything changes.
So I think what's important there, beyond the list of dozen or so kind, I guess, of content inside volumetric frames is like how do they, in terms of visualization and interaction, relate to the document? Is there one and only one cover? Are there multiple covers? Is there a cover or cover alternatives? Do we see like a line between those and the XOR document? Are they within a visible boundary? Like, let's say it's a big cube and there are small cubes within it. How do we get them back if we hide them? That's the kind of thing that is like, it's probably nearly the same for all of those. But why do I mention this is because if I make, let's say, the first, I want to say number one would be the manuscript, maybe number two would be reference, and the rest would come after. Like I imagine that's the most important is the manuscript, and the second the reference, and then everything else comes after. Maybe charts number three, maybe cover number four, etc. But the point is, if there is no commonalities between those, it's problematic. If there is, which I imagine there is, then making one or two and finding the commonalities, then it helps because we can also say in terms of being pragmatic with the project, okay, we've done the top three and the rest is to be done later or up to the user and whatnot. And it's kind of modular again. Let's say maybe there is a 15th element or kind of volumetric frame elements we did not think of, and then we can add those to the list. But it's like, how do they relate to the XOR document when they are shown, hidden? Do they are always shown or not? How do we bring them back? Or you were saying alternatives, for example, in terms of what Mark and Peter suggested for a paragraph. How do we do this? Is it like part of the manuscript and thus the manuscript has subparts or sub-elements, and that's pretty core, let's say, because yeah, I guess people want the manuscript. That's the one thing they share after, I guess, if they publish. So yeah.
Good questions. A lot of the interactions I think we need to now work on. So I've written comments. Each one of these can have more than one visualization to appear, including the cover and outline. They all appear by default in a visual frame. That's just our initial design, right? Mm-hmm. Every frame can be referenced from, referenced from the cover, outline, and manuscript, as well as linked between each other. So the photographs should be able to be viewable inline in the manuscript, or they should be able to just link, person interact with them, they appear on the side or wherever they may have that. That's really, really important. But we also need a name for a manuscript once it's published.
I don't think we are at that stage.
No, but just a working name. Once published, this becomes, I'm just going to call it main text. Doesn't have to be like a important name, but it's just indicating that manuscript is for an unpublished document.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so okay. I agree with those questions and more. Let's just skim through that so we can address them, because this should be quite obvious. In the scene, in addition to what's in the manuscript, you also have references, user notes, and user images, just things that haven't been put in the document yet.
So there are not frames. There are, let's say it's the stuff that's on the desk around the thing one is working on. It's manipulable, but it's not part of the XOR document, or is it?
It's not part of the XR document. It's not saved with the XR document, I think. However, are they frames? That's a really fucking great question. Because you would, yeah, they're also in frames. You can take them out of frames, and that's what we're getting to in the next section. These are also in frames, but individual. Come on. So you can, let's say with images, you can take an image, put it wherever you want, but X, Y coordinates are still in relation, X, Y, Z coordinates are still in relation to that frame.
But if they're in a frame and a frame is part of an XOR document, then they're part of an XOR document too.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. They are not. Are these XOR documents then? I mean, let me reverse it and ask you, excuse me, we have everything set up to write a manuscript. Then the user wants to put in a series of annotated sources, references. How do you want that to happen? Logically.
They append it to the list of reference they already have.
No, but those are going to be, it's like the analogy now is that you have Adobe Acrobat open and you have Microsoft Word open. Until you have put them into Word, they're still in your desktop, but they're not in the same thing.
I mean, at one point, if they need to bring new references in, they do it two way. Either it's from within the experiment or outside of it. Well, I mean, no, they need to bring it inside the experiment anyway. So the only question is it in XOR or not? So for example, if they drag and drop from the desktop, let's say a BibTeX file or Zotero JSON or whatever, do they manually type a DOI? But I don't think anybody does this. But it would be, that would be the easiest right now. If they were to type a DOI, then they have a reference they can use.
They're not going to do that.
Yeah,
I agree. However, a Zotero or whatever BibTeX file from the desktop into XR, I think is very likely.
Yes. What we can also do is, because I know that people do this with Zotero, and I was citing some work yesterday, and on the publisher place, there was save the BibTeX or Zotero file. And I know that, for example, Zotero, they do a plugin for the browser so that you can have like add to Pocket or whatnot. You can save to your Zotero library. So we could also imagine save to my how do we call it? Save to my knowledge space, and then it shares you're still browsing in 2D. You're still browsing as per usual, but when you go back to your knowledge space, you will have that reference in. And I don't think it's. I mean, conceptually, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's the workflow people use, so we can suggest it. Is it worth the work? I'm not so sure, because to be honest, again, it's such a classical thing that everybody understands it. But it would mean, again, in terms of workflow, you browse, add reference to your knowledge space, and then after you put the headset on, and then you have that reference floating in there. I think that's, pretty nice.
I agree. Whether we implement it now or not doesn't matter to an extent. We'll say what we can, but logically it needs to fit. But what is it? Does it come in as a XR document, or we can call it something else? I mean, I don't mind saying JSON stream, or we just have to be really clear and honest. We don't have to be elegant.
Yeah. I think because to me, XOR document is something that is that has at least a manuscript, even if empty, in it, because we're talking about authoring environment. And here, that wouldn't be like a full-on document. It's just like get yet another floating text snippet that can then, after on, be integrated in an XOR document and whatever. But
are they free floating frames or frames? Because we have to decide how to treat them when they're inside. Because if we look at the next, skip ahead just for a moment, can go back this bit. The placement of frames, you should be able to put a frame anywhere you want or locked onto a panel. And walls, table, or body, whatever physical thing, you should be able to place individual elements or frames or panels. So having all the references in a frame might be useful. I mean, because let's say you have just 10 references you're looking at that you know, whatever number, they're going to have to come in some form. Most likely it's going to be a column to begin with, right? Why not make that a frame?
I'm sure.
Okay, these are also in frames, brackets, not in XR documents.
But that's not coherent with what was written before, though.
Yeah, no, we have to go back. I'm removing the word volumetric for now. So we have document frames and external frames.
Then I'm not sure why just say it's a subsection of documents. I think that's clearer.
Subsection is not a useful phrase. It's too vague. And a level 3 is a subsection of level 2 in the manuscript outline. But I'm not saying we have to use frames. Maybe components, document components.
It's again, yeah, or XOR document components.
Document elements. No, the problem with that is I am actually talking about a frame or a box. I am talking about a thing that can be, well, okay, even a group, I guess. Hang on. So object hierarchy. Okay, outside of, let me just write it as a sentence to begin with. Outside of this, hang on, not object, document.
Is there a single XOR document per scene?
There can be many. Because they can also be the source, right? An XR document can be manuscript or PDF equivalent, right?
Then we need to distinguish, because again, I don't think the affordances will be the same. If you have the manuscript, that's like the core of your work. The others, I would assume also they were mostly read outside of XOR.
Better close the window. Yeah.
And I think right now, because it's year 2 and year 1 was reading, I think we focus on authoring. So I would suggest not to insist too much on that part. I think maybe if there is a single XOR document which is not write only, but read and write, and that the rest are things that can be present but that we don't focus on, to me that makes sense for the workflow.
Trying to deal with this. Yeah. Let's call it papers. How about even simpler? Except for you blinking, it looks like you're frozen.
I would even say the single XOR manuscript. Would people author multiple manuscripts in the same session?
I think someone might do that. Like some people would use multiple Word documents because maybe they would have draft 1, draft 2. Maybe they would have notes.
But they would still publish as one thing at the end. So to me, there would be like still one manuscript in that sense. Or
okay. I think that people will need that flexibility later, but we don't need to worry about that now.
I think when people need flexibility and it requires more work that's not justified, it's best if they ask us, so that we don't get too much things that are theoretical that adds work. If it doesn't add any work and it gives more freedom to the user, for sure we can leave it. But if it's more work, it's better if they ask. We can still write somewhere that we considered it, but I think it's better to be, how do you say, minimalist.
Yeah, so now we have to change this. Now we have, because in the volumetric frame, we have a manuscript as a thing. We should probably just call that body text. Editable body text in a manuscript, frozen in paper.
Yeah.
Oops. Come on.
And I would tend to sort that list by basically importance.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do that. I think it mostly is, but we can definitely have a look. So the cover is literally on the front or the top.
Yeah,
Outline.
but it's not what do you start with the cover? When you author, you start with the body text, no?
Yes, but when you create a document, you generally save it and give it a name. So I'm not.
You still start with something. Even if before saving the document, you put like a couple of words in it, no?
Some people do. I often do because now it's safe in the OS. In the olden days, you couldn't really dare to do that. You should save it first in case something happened. But the logic here is also okay. So on export, the cover becomes important. When you're writing, it isn't. I agree. But I think
now we're doing the authoring part, so I think it's that. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying chronologically, my understanding, or at least my habit, is content first. So here that would be body text.
Danny has actually argued for this. Okay.
And then maybe, but that's really for our context, yeah, I would say probably that. Even probably after the body text, because, for example, you justify in the sense of it's not writing a poem as Andrea was mentioning. It's writing academic work, and you can't do that without reference. So yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. You know what? I'm going to put this last because you do make them towards the end, and it does say they will be first when published.
Mhm. I don't know what that means.
I'll tell you in a second. So first of all, I put user notes up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Saved space. So the cover ideally should have. Here are several ways you can view this document. Tap here to view it as a house. Tap here to view it as a list. Obviously not tap, hopefully, but makes sense.
I think if so, then it needs to be expanded quite a bit more. And honestly, I think if it's part of the authoring process, yes. If it's once published, it's out of scope for this year.
No, it's not out of scope because it's not just about when it's published, it'll be put there to be accessible for the user. But during writing, I mean, one thing further down, let me just skip for a second. I have user position, posture, right? Sitting down and standing up are very different, even.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're writing compared to organizing information, that's very different. So I'm thinking when you're writing, you may very well want to actually use your physical desk, lean forward and be in that mode, right? And then when you stand back or you stand up, you want a different view. That is why for the author as well, to have instantly accessible different layout configurations is really important. This is just a matter of once the user has made them, they may choose to also include some easily accessible for the reader.
To me, then it's a bit more like a print preview. Let's say if I author a document, at some point, if I don't think anymore about the content, but only about how the viewer is going to see it. So to me, there are different steps.
there are two different reasons for doing it, absolutely. But one of them is, one of them is entirely a print preview. It is about the reader, no question. There's also, while you're writing, okay, now I just want to see this paragraph. I got to focus on this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm confused now. Show me my entire work. That's also a layout. So for me as the author, I want to be able to quickly go between seeing this, 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 and this.
Yes, but then I think it's not the same as the cover. It's a different way to interact with the entire document.
Yes.
Okay, but then I think it needs to be its own thing, or it needs to be its own. It's not really an element. It's a like preview.
It is its own frame because you can have a list of configurations, right? And because the cover, so obviously in Microsoft Word, you can have a link to an external web page or a link to a heading, right? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So you can also have a link to a saved configuration. So on the cover, the user can literally write, view it in a circle, and then select the text and then assign the spatial configuration circle to that text.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a small, in that sense, it's a small thing.
I think it's important because most of the work is spatial, because when it's not, then our work is a little bit, or it's pointless. So I think
it's a very big thing in itself. I meant small thing in the sense that the user can, as the author or reader, can access a different configuration layout from the cover. That's what I meant.
And I think, like, for example, the save spatial configuration, then that should go maybe all the way below body text if it's something that is done frequently. If we switch between, let's say, big picture and editing just a single paragraph, and it's something that is really frequent, if it's part of the authoring process, basically, then that's one of the things we will have to focus on to hopefully show something different.
I put it at the bottom because it contains everything, right? And it's not necessarily most useful through a frame on the wall. I think this could be one of those things that could be an hand menu, wrist menu, or even if we figure out an arm menu. So you can, change the view like this. This is more like a place to put it kind of thing, logically, rather than interactively.
I'm checking the time now. Do you want to go through what's left?
Sure. Yeah, I think we're basically done. I'm going to go through afterwards, make sure the language is consistent, and then send it to you again. But we have, I think the key issue for us to decide on now is if something's in a frame, let's say a reference, and you pull it out, how does the system know whether you're going to leave it floating in space or if you want it to go into a panel or onto a wall? We need to experiment with proximities and magnets and stuff.
My suggestion with this on yesterday was if you have a ring, then if you pull through that ring that says freeform or snap back, that would be enough, because you can do it and then you can release it still wherever you want after. So I think that would be, I haven't tried it, but my intuition is that would work.
It would work. The only thing, I agree, we should do this. If you pull it out, the ring has to be quite soon, because if you want it to be just up and to the side, the ring may interfere with that. So I agree with you. You pull out, and then let's say up is freeform. Once you've done that, now you can put it anywhere. If you go down, then it knows it should snap to the closest thing it is to, right? That's the kind of thing you mean?
Yeah, we can find different ways to test it. It could be either let's say, a ring dedicated to that feature is fixed place, let's say always middle left of the frame, or it's relative to the item you just pulled out, and it appears, let's say, after 5 centimeters are being pulled away, or after a few seconds, we can have different conditions for this to happen. My bet is, again, both would work. Which one is the nicest? I don't really know. I guess always being in the same place is nice. Maybe if that's the only ring that pops out, for sure it will be very efficient. If we start to have half a dozen ring every time we move anything, maybe it's overwhelming, but we will see over time, I guess.
So what are we calling the ring? The ring menu or ring what? System?
System, I think, is better because some of them stay in place and some of them are like more contextual menus.
So what we need to do then is under that design, every time you select text, what should the options be? Look it up, find, place, all of that. So yeah. Okay, cool. That's a huge thing to do. So interactions, just two things: write a plain text manuscript and arrange frames, notes, and media spatially on the walls. And then, oh yeah, cite sources. That's really important. That's both for academic and for the annotated bibliography.
With maybe there the browser add-on in order to append to the list of reference.
So annoying when it does that. Right. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Yeah, I think this is very good. So the first thing that I want to see is do you have a few more minutes or not?
Literally a couple of minutes.
Okay, a couple of minutes, right. So the thing is, whether we choose, whatever language we choose, we do want to have a thing to write on.
Yeah.
You currently have a manuscript rectangle. I think that is good. We need a way to, this should all be obvious, just to go through it. We need a way to move it around in the space. You currently have touch in the middle, which I think is fine. We need to have a way to start typing into it. And, you know, having a cursor and having line breaks should be enough with Bluetooth keyboard for now. And then we need to have ways, we need to be able to move it where we want, and we need to be able to choose to see any of these other frames. These are the things we need to start thinking about, right?
I was thinking, actually, the suggestion from Andrea was interesting. Even though it's not the type of document we author, namely poetry, it's not academic as far as I know, but it might, because to be honest, the wide frame of a manuscript as is looks a lot like Word. So in the sense of making it happen, even though it's not easy, it's the most obvious one. But I worry a bit, hence like the volumetric before frames.
Tell me about Andrea's suggestion to remind me which one you're talking about. Sorry for interrupting you. It's just because we're low on time.
That Andrea was suggesting to write poetry in XR. And I'm not saying rings are helping in that sense, but it also reminds me of Adam's experiment where the text was as a kind of snake or a kind of, what's the name? I forgot. But let's say along a curve, this kind of thing.
Fabien, cutting you off, just say I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think you have to do the basic writing in a rectangle for academic use, but don't spend a lot of time on it. Try to make it minimal. Just make it so we have it. And then we will do exactly what you say. We will experiment with that because, you know, when I do the layouts in the books, I like to have like maybe 3 words on a whole double page spread to make a point sometimes. I'm absolutely for an academic / poetic document being very, very spatialized as well. So yes, agree.
And please have a look in the chat with the micro gesture. As I shown you the little video, I don't think it changed much for us. And it doesn't really work well now. but it's happening still. So because we discuss often about gestures, I think it's something to keep track of. And ideally try them, but it's just on the Quest, not on the Vision Pro. I'll put a link in the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at it here now. Yeah, that's very cool. So I'll see you Monday morning, right? So we talk before Dini.
If need be.
Actually, I can't do that time. I have to, if it has to,
have a look at what's feasible and if we need to do this. I don't really like, to be honest, try to discussing ahead because it feels like she's not included in that. So I'm not sure why you want to do this.
because she's not included because of things that have nothing to do with us. So we have to do this. And on Monday, she no longer likes to have demos ahead of presentations. So even though you're presenting, I had to remove that from our webpage. We don't have 15 or half an hour before. Yeah, we just have to make it as clean as possible so she can approve or not. Right. So we
But you need to take the time to discuss and agree with whatever we propose. So
yeah, but of course, but that's only Wednesdays.
Okay.
And we still need to, okay, so today I will upload, excuse me, of course, our transcript and all of that stuff for her. And I will, of course, make the page we just agreed on ready, link it to both of you, and say, here are the issues we're now trying to do moving forward. But we know already Dini wants to write in space. Absolutely. You know, that's one of her key things. So to mention that with the caveat that she can approve or disapprove everything is totally fine, but she has no time. She hasn't had time to look at anything for the last couple of weeks, and until her semester is over, which I think is only about a week, she won't be able to look at anything we do at all. She hardly even replies to emails, which is stressing me out a lot because Ismail's been asking questions for a month now. So I do not want to overload her. I want to show her that we are moving ahead in a way that she is happy about and can change if she wants to.
Well, I mean, again, it's whenever because having fully or having a long document like just we discussed now, it takes even more time to go through, and the more in depth they are, the more time again one needs to go through it. So I'm not sure how to proceed there, because I think by let's say meeting again on Monday afternoon before and making the document more demanding to approve, if that's the process we're following.
It's not a long document. It's a thin document. It's listy.
Yeah, but it's not easy, because as you have to do now, it's like, okay, now it's not an XR document. It's not a manuscript. It's a body text, and then it has to be coherent through, and it has to be logical. That, for example, there is only one body text, or maybe there is multiple. So it's not. Yeah, I don't think it's easy to understand, even after spending some time on it. So
yeah, but Fabien, I agree with you, but okay. Hang on. Oh, hang on. I gotta go.